Game number 2 last night of the Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA playoffs inside TD Garden. And for the first time in their 8 playoff games at home in Beantown, the Celtics were not a double-digit favorite. And who could fault the odds makers? Following game number 1 of the ECF, Indiana taking Boston to overtime, should have won it in regulation, but a disaster in the final 10 seconds, so the Celtics escape in OT in game number 1. The thought, Donnie, then, from the betting public and the odds makers alike, the Pacers are about to give the C's a much tougher test than anybody anticipated entering this series. Wrong. Boston easily covers as an 8.5-point favorite last night, winning by 16, 126-110. The first time for the Celtics as less than a double-digit favorite at home. They easily cover the number. And oh, by the way, a total that was on the rise by 2.5 points from the opening game of the ECF, closing last night at 224.5. Skies over once again. Both of the first 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals well over their pregame number.
Yeah, if we have any indications, too, for the Boston Celtics run, if they do make it to the NBA Finals, it looks like they're on a mission to do that, then either A, Luka Doncic and or Anthony Edwards, whoever they face, certainly is going to get injured at some point in that series to give the Boston Celtics a free run all the way through the playoffs. Because if anybody's watching stuff, like the best player on every team continues to get hurt going up against the Celtics. Now, they're not doing that on purpose, and certainly they're going to say, oh, no, it's not fair. Let's hold off this Eastern Conference Finals for a couple weeks till other teams get healthy. No, you play who's in front of you right now, and the Celtics certainly are a much better team than the Pacers. But the question came in to game number 2, and rightfully so. What did we see in game number 1 and how that's going to turn over? Now, sometimes, Ben, I talk about this. It's not actually X and O's and handicapping. I said all day for the past 2 days, you take a look at the Pacers. They understand they blew that game. And to me, that's not like, okay. And also, before the game, Halliburton and the boys, they were all watching film. Like, they're not discouraged. They actually saw a lot of good things on tape, and they're excited for game number 2. Bogus. We're all humans here. You gave a game away. What you should have won that game. Now you line up in game number 2, knowing you should be up 1-0. You're down 0-1 and played out exactly the way I thought. You had your best chance here. That was such a demoralizing loss. There are no moral victories in the NBA playoffs here. So the fact that they got beat by 16 points wasn't a surprise, but also Halliburton gets injured in that point. And the Boston Celtics, maybe it's Tatum on for a night. Maybe it's Brown on for a night. They just have too many good players that on any given time can step up to the plate. But I still have that takeaway. Game 1 to game 2. What a mirage here. Oh, moral victory. They'll play really well. Give me the 10 points. Nonsense. This series, it's a wrap, Ben.
Yeah, it is, DRS. Boston this year at home. Now 49 games between the regular and postseason inside TD Garden. The Celtics are 43-6 straight up and now make that 26-21-2 against the spread. Booked as a favorite in every game. And last night against Indiana was the first time the Celtics in their 8 playoff home games were not a double-digit favorite. What was my best bet to end out Thursday's show? Pretty simply, Boston laying 9 in that pregame number. And because of the betting handle and the public belief in the Pacers, because of how competitive game number 1 was, despite the disaster that cost Indiana maybe their best opportunity of stealing a game in the ECF, the line worked against Boston pregame. It was only an 8.5-point spread. Both you and I discussed that at length yesterday. The idea that maybe we thought this could have been a competitive series. If you would have asked me my series best bet before game number 1, it would have been the Pacers plus 2.5 games on the series spread with the C's a hefty series favorite. Thinking Indiana would get 1 and then maybe 2. Not the case at all. And that's why we changed our thought entering game number 2. Many thought, okay, maybe the Pacers are better than we expect. It was the complete opposite for me. Boston was going to lay a dud. They laid a dud in game number 1 and still came out with a victory. And in their responses from their duds, which had often been game 2s at home in their previous 2 sets, they win by at least 13 points and they cover a number. 10 wins for the Celtics in this playoff run. 8 by 13 points or more. 7 of those 10 victories, a cover for the C's. In the story, of course, for Indiana, outside of losing the basketball game, Tyrese Halliburton exiting early in the third quarter, re-aggravating, as Rick Carlisle, the head coach of the Pacers, said, a previous injury he suffered throughout the year. His status for the remainder of the Eastern Conference Finals, very uncertain. And, Donnie, that's why you see a number at minus 10,000 for the Celtics to win the East and advance to the NBA Finals. Not just that. Now it is in minus money for Boston to sweep in 4. The previous shortest and most likely outcome was Boston pulling off their third straight gentleman's sweep in 5 games. Now Boston in only 4 is minus 140.
Yeah, Boston in 4 feels like it should actually be the minus 10,000 to win the actual series because I don't see much of a fight coming from the Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton. And the talking points that we used also from the previous series in games 2 in round number 1 and round number 2, where the Celtics just didn't show up at home like, you know what, caught us by surprise. We thought that game number 1 was a surprise that the Celtics needed to say, okay, the Pacers are here. We still got this victory. Let's take care of business now. I would be very surprised if the Pacers won another game because if Halliburton, we don't know the exact status of the injury, but if they're calling it a hamstring, we're not going to see him for the rest of the series. Or if we do, it'll be game 6 or 7, and Halliburton will look like OG Anunoby limping up and down the court and playing 3 or 4 minutes to see if they can give his team a spark. So from that aspect of it, they were heavy underdogs to enter the series with a great player like Halliburton. Now he's out and they're down 0-2. I understand they're going back home and the bench players will play much better at that point, but unless you're saying TJ McConnell is going to turn into, I don't know, John Stockton over the next 3 games and give you 20s and 10s out here, which I don't think is going to be the case. This series is a wrap right now. Good win for the Celtics last night. And again, you actually didn't even get their best effort. Jaylen Brown was sensational yesterday, but the rest of the guys just about average in every way, and they still put them away by 16 points.
And we'll talk about Boston's brilliance and the 40-point performance from Jaylen Brown that now makes him the odds-on favorite to win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP award in front of Jason Tatum. But let me just ask a quick follow-up question. Again, we'll get to that in our next segment. Let me just ask you a quick follow-up. Why did you compare TJ McConnell to John Stockton? Why not like Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson, or Mark Jackson?
Or AI. Or AI at this point. AI. Look, he could turn into it. I watched him in Philadelphia. He could turn into it. Let's see.
Okay, just want to make sure. More around the Eastern Conference Finals next. Boston brilliance once again last night inside TD Garden. The Celtics have won 10 playoff games throughout this postseason run. 8 of the 10 by at least 13 points. 7 of the 10 victories, a cover as well. And last night was the first time for the C's not as a double-digit favorite at home, and they easily cover as an 8.5-point favorite. So, DRS, as we look around at what has happened for Boston here throughout this postseason, Jaylen Brown, he scored 40 last night. He has been sensational in this series so far for the Celtics. Was not Game 1's leading scorer for Boston or the game overall, but of course the corner and dagger 3 in regulation to send it to overtime. And last night, 40 points. By far the leading scorer in that basketball game as the Celtics win by 16 and take a commanding 2-0 series lead. We looked at the series odds in our previous segment. Boston entering Game 2 was minus 1,800 outright. Boston entering the ECF minus 1,250 to win the Eastern Conference crown. The Celtics now minus 10,000 as they get ready to go to Indianapolis on Saturday night. They will be a 7-point favorite in Indy, with Tyrese Halliburton's hamstring being the focus for Indiana.
Yeah, and that's also, look, you have superstars that can step up at different moments. You always like to have that Batman and Robin, and you certainly have that with the Celtics. And behind the scenes, we always see if it works out or doesn't work out because of the past couple of years. These two guys can't play together, and one needs the ball, the other's not going to get it. Everybody's upset. They're both really paid handsomely. And when you see games like yesterday where Tatum wasn't on to start the game, Brown was 14 of 27 from the floor. But the most impressive thing is a lot of times we don't see the volume from three-point range that we saw last night from Jaylen Brown. He shot 10 three-point shots. He's more of that guy that's going to go 2 for 4 as opposed to Tatum, who's going to do his normal 1 for 7, which he did yesterday. But it just goes to show you the depth of this team, and we're still waiting to get back Kristaps Porzingis. And another point on Porzingis, this is one of those things where if you're down, and not to say we even thought this was going to happen, the Celtics down 0-2 in the series. We got to rush Porzingis back. Now you can just sit this guy. He doesn't even have to return for this series and can wait all the way to the NBA Finals till he's completely 100% healthy. That's the luxury of putting teams away you're supposed to put away so you can rest some of your superstar guys. Good win for the Celtics last night. And again, Porzingis, we might not even see him in the Eastern Conference Finals.
We got the report a few days ago that KP was going to try to come back for game number 4. They might have him do that in Indy just to log some minutes, get in some cardio, and get up to game speed by the time they get to the NBA Championship Series. Now, I'm not sure this series is done in 4, but that's what the odds makers expect. The Celtics now to sweep at minus 140. The shortest number entering last night's game number 2, Boston in 5, their third consecutive gentleman's sweep at a plus 145 price. Jason Tatum under 30 points. He had scored 30 plus in 3 of the last 4, only 23 last night. Derek White pours in 23 as well, making 4 triples. And Pascal Siakam, 20 plus now in 5 straight games for Indiana. Their leading scorer, 28 points last night, well over his prop of 20 and a hook. But what the Pacers, the best offensive team all year long in the association DRS, have done so well throughout this season and into the postseason, balanced effort, 7 players in double digits in game number 1, only 4 last night, and that included Tyrese Halliburton, who scored 10 but did not play the final quarter and change. TJ McConnell stays under double digits. He had gone with at least 10 points or more in 6 of the previous 8 entering last night. Now his production will be first and foremost front and center, as you would expect him to take over the starting point guard role in favor of Tyrese Halliburton if Halliburton cannot play tomorrow night. Again, Boston, a 7-point favorite as of this moment for game number 3. The interesting change in the odds is not Boston looking like they've already reached the NBA Championship Series. It's Jaylen Brown, after a 40-point performance, becoming the odds-on favorite to win the ECF MVP in front of Jason Tatum. Yesterday, Tatum was a minus 280 favorite, Donnie.
That's what happens when you go on a day-to-day basis. And also, we're not looking at an extended series here. It's like, okay, Tatum will have a good game, then Brown, and we'll see how it plays out over 7 games. You have that monster performance in game number 2 and become the favorite. We're probably looking at 2 more games, which means Tatum has to be really good in game 3 and 4. And then you take a look at Brown. He can't be as sensational as he won in game number 2, scoring 40 points. We thought the series was probably a 5-game series before it started, and that was with a completely healthy Indiana Pacers team. They're not completely healthy now. I would be surprised if we get back to TD Garden for game number 5.
Listen, if you think there's any value left in this series, it's probably Jason Tatum to win the most valuable player, but I'm not sure it's the best of bets.